Hey, it's Barb from Making at Home. Today, Erin and I are going to talk a little bit about Back to Eden gardening. We're actually doing some planting because, as you can tell, it's sunny out, and in the Pacific Northwest, that's when you do stuff. I wanted to make a little note that you're probably going to hear a lot of noise. I'm going to try and add out as much as I can, but that constant drone you hear in the background, we live next to the highway. We actually live right in between the highway and the railroad tracks, and in a little city. So that basically tells you, you can Back to Eden garden anywhere. What I wanted to talk about today is why we switched to Back to Eden gardening. When we first moved into this house, it had 2 raised beds in the backyard, and they worked for us for a couple years. The problem was, over the winter and the fall, of course, the weeds would come up. And then in the spring, I would spend hours out in the yard prepping those gardens because of a very thick layer of weeds. And it just got old quick. My friend Elisa showed me this documentary about Back to Eden gardening, and the man who is in the video, his name is Paul Gauchi. He's actually here in Washington, and he has this small farm, I guess you'd call it. It's a homestead, where he's been using this method for years. And so his is more established. Elisa's garden, that I'll show you later in the second video, is also been established longer than ours. We started ours about 1.5 years ago. So you're going to see a newer Back to Eden garden and then a more established Back to Eden garden, and show you what the possibilities are. And I'm telling you, it's amazing. We started this garden, like I said, about 1.5 years ago, and I have barely had to weed. So today what I'm going to show you is how Erin and I plant in the Back to Eden garden method. What do we have to do when you're planting something like potatoes or onions?
So when you're planting almost anything, basically you just want to pull the wood chips back. And as you can see, I go about 1.5 inches down, and it's still wet under there. I've never watered this garden, never. So you keep pulling back until you hit dirt. And then if your dirt is this close to your wood chips, go ahead and dig yourself a little bit in there. And the cool thing is when you do this method, your dirt is really soft. And go ahead and just pop your potato in there, get your dirt around it, and cover it up with your wood chips. Done.
And so do you have to do anything special with spacing?
Not really. I mean, potatoes, you want to give them room so that they'll spread out. But something I noticed with this type of method, your soil and the wood chips are so loose that the plant will actually make room. So, like say your root type plants, like carrots, beets, the root plants, if they're strong and healthy, with how loose this soil is plus the wood chips, they'll push each other out of the way. So they'll push against each other and make room for themselves.
Now, one of the other questions that a lot of people have with Back to Eden garden is rotation. Do you have to worry about rotation of the crops with Back to Eden?
It's beneficial all the way around to do it. I rotate my crops just so that, the right nutrients is there for my plants. But if you happen to plant something in the same spot, 2 years in a row, it's not really going to hurt it, but I would definitely move it the following year after that to a different spot. Mostly what I worry about is more or less companion planting than anything.
Is companion planting still important in a Back to Eden garden?
Yes, it's important no matter what type of gardening you do. There's two reasons why. Companion plant usually will, those companion plants will usually take in different types of nutrients, so so that way your soil is somewhat balanced in that area and they're not fighting each other for the nutrients in that soil. The other reason is that a lot of companion plants, such as onions and carrots, the onions tend to deter insects or certain bugs that feed on the carrots from attacking your carrots. So there's a lot of companion plants that work with other plants that are beneficial by keeping pests away. So companion planting is beneficial no matter what type of gardening you do. So if you're doing sets like onions or garlic, as you can see, I already have garlic growing. And I spaced them the traditional distance, roughly 3 to 5 inches apart. You really don't need to put them that far apart. They'll still grow really big in the Back to Eden method. But basically all I did when I planted the garlic, same with the onions, is go ahead and pull your wood chips back until you hit your dirt. And go ahead and take your onion set and just set it in there so that the roots are touching the dirt, and then put the wood chips and everything right around it. The plant will start to grow.
Seems super simple.
It is. And when you're going to plant, say you got like tomato starts or something like that, when you go and do that, you may have to push your wood chips back a little farther than what I'm doing here to make a larger hole, because you may have to actually go ahead and dig down into the dirt just because you have that hole start, and you're placing that into the ground as well. So you may have to dig a little bit further down into your actual dirt to fit that in there. But
so
then,
anything with a root ball, like something out of a planting pot that you're transplanting, you want to put it a little farther down into the dirt.
yeah, because you want to consider your wood chips the top level. If you're planting to the top of your dirt that's on the pot, you want to go just a couple inches below your wood chips so that that fits in there and you can still cover it with the wood chips, because the wood chips are going to help keep the moisture in. As you can see, if you look in this hole, I've never watered and it's wet in there. So just place it in there, so move everything in around it. Hey everybody.
This is my husband. I know, he's hardly ever on camera. He hates it. I know he does.
Yes.
So now that we've kind of explained how you plant plants in the BTE garden, we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits and why you'd want to do it and how hard it is and how easy it is, and just all of the things. What do you think was the biggest reason we switched to BTE? Was it because of how easy it was?
No, actually for me, what it was last year when we were doing our gardening, it started to become a lot of work. And basically I was waiting for wood chips to be delivered to the house, and I finally got some, and after that it was a lot less backbreaking work. I mean, it saved me on so much time, and that was one of the reasons that I guess we were wanting to do that.
Yeah, because basically a lot of people don't have a lot of time to garden. Gardening is a lot of weeding, a lot of maintenance, and I think that's the biggest motivation. And the great thing about Back to Eden is you don't spend a lot of time out in the garden. Twice a year, like the beginning of the year, we put in the plants, and at the end of the year, we take out the plants.
Pretty much.
And you said that how much time did you spend weeding last year?
After I got the wood chips in, I spent maybe a total of maybe 2 hours for the whole year. Before that, it was almost a daily thing. I would have to go out and weed somewhere in one of the gardens.
Well, that, and I noticed there was a lot less watering that we had to do. Even though last year it was pretty dry. Last year it was hot, and there wasn't a lot of rain. And I don't think you watered nearly as much as when we had our regular gardens. Even though they were raised beds back here, we were watering, I want to say, every other day.
At least during the dry spell, I was watering daily. It was part of my morning chores around the house: feed the chickens, water the garden, and then start my day off. But then once we got the wood chips in, during the dry spell, I was watering maybe every 2 weeks, and then if it would rain, then I would skip a while. So I was hardly ever watering at all.
And I think last year was unusual because we had started tomatoes indoors, and because it was so cold so late in the season, we weren't able to get them out into the garden quick enough. So they got very leggy. We had huge tomato plants in our house, and by the time we got them out into the garden, they were looking pretty sparse, pretty tall, and then what was it, like 2 weeks after we planted them, all of a sudden they just took off, right?
Yeah.
And they looked like they were going to die. They really did, because they were so wilty looking initially. And then if you look at, I'm going to link below the post that we have for Back to Eden Garden and how it saved our garden, because those tomato plants looked like they were all going to die. And then within, I want to say within a month or two,
it looked like a tomato forest.
We had a tomato forest out here. It was insane. And on some of the gardening groups I belong to, I showed pictures, and people said, oh, you should have thinned them because you're not going to get a good production. There's not going to be able, light will not be able to get in to produce tomatoes. And I can tell you that was not the case with Back to Eden.
No, we ended up getting 10 gallons worth of tomatoes.
We still have tomatoes in our freezer from last year that we didn't process. We made quarts and quarts of tomato sauce. And this is what I'm talking about. The reason that we're doing Back to Eden is because it's a simple garden method. It's low maintenance. Anybody can do it. And the benefit of it, and the reason you want to do it, is to try and replace something that you purchased from the grocery store. The whole goal is to reduce our grocery bill, be in control of the food we're eating. Like I said, we do all organic. With Back to Eden, you do not have to use any kind of fertilizer, any kind of sprays, nothing. And you will see bugs. There will be bugs. Like, we're fighting slugs right now because this is Washington and slugs are everywhere. Because we also do it with our fruit trees. We had aphids crazy last year. And everybody freaks out and they're like, we need to spray the trees. There's aphids everywhere. We left our tree. Our apple tree was covered. We left our apple tree, and then what happens when you have an overabundance of one kind of bug and you just leave it, the predators will naturally come in and balance out the problem. Mm-hmm. So after a month or two of having a huge amount of aphids, all of a sudden
we had a huge amount of ladybugs, and on my apple tree I was finding ladybug eggs all over the place.
Yeah.
So you have to let it balance out, and with the Back to Eden gardening, that's one of the purposes behind it.
One of the other problems that people always say about Back to Eden that don't understand it is you're putting wood chips down. Don't you have nitrogen problems when you're putting your wood chips down? Is it, what was it?
No, you don't mix the wood chips. You do not till. It's a no-till method. If you till your wood chips into the ground, then those wood chips, yeah, you will have a nitrogen problem because the wood chips pull the nitrogen from your plants. Well, if you got that down in your root systems for your plants, yeah, it's going to cause problems for that. But you have it on the top because you want the wood chips to break down. And it creates an environment that is really healthy for all the beneficial bugs in your garden. I haven't not seen this many worms in my garden in a long time.
I know, it's crazy.
I mean, I'll go out there to plant a plant, and within 5 minutes of sitting there starting to dig a hole, I see worms moving all over the place.
When you're tilling, you're destroying the soil. It's not beneficial. You're not. When you till it up, you're going to end up drying out the soil. You're going to end up getting rid of all those good bugs, and it's
you're
just
not
going to
really
end up
destroying the soil. What you're doing is you're killing all the beneficial things that are living in your soil. All the microscopic little bugs that are beneficial for your plants. You're killing the worms that are on that upper layer, so the worms will migrate down when you start to till, and they feel that vibration in the ground. They'll try to get away, but I mean, worms move slowly, so you end up killing the worms that are in that upper layer that you tilled, and then they have to migrate back up to get to the garden area to feed, and that takes more time. The no-till method is so much better for the soil.
Back to Eden Garden is mimicking nature. It's mimicking what nature does on its own, and why would you want to mess with perfection? And the other thing that a lot of people, when they say, oh, the wood chips will create a nitrogen deficiency, the only time that you want to do any kind of addendums to your soil is if you put blood meal, and actually using urine. Human urine can help with that as well.
Yeah, you have to dilute it quite a bit.
But we've never had to do that. We just put it in and let nature do what it's going to do. And if we have a crop that fails one year, oh well. That's what gardening is. It's trial and error. We've had an abundance of one kind of vegetable, and then the next year it won't be quite as good. But you take it as it comes.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you plant a variety, because you may have your zucchini go crazy one year, and then the next year it might not do all that great, but then all of a sudden, you have your squashes going nuts, or you have an overabundance of your leafy vegetables. So always plant a variety.
And the thing that Paul mentions, Paul Gauci, in the video that I'm going to link below, is that the produce that you get from the Back to Eden Garden is so nutrient dense, and so it's got water. So much water in it, and that is where, once you've established a Back to Eden garden, when your fruits and vegetables grow, they have a huge amount of moisture, nutrients, all of the good things in them that bugs can't eat them. Paul even mentions in the documentary that when you have a bug try and eat one of his vegetables or what have you, They drown because there's so much water, and you really have to check out that video because he shows, breaking open a carrot or, an asparagus or whatever, and everything tastes so much better, and I can vouch for that. Mm-hmm. You're going to get an abundance of fruits and vegetables like us last year. You're going to have so much stuff, you're not going to know what to do with some of it.
We were giving
stuff away. So, but yeah, that's the benefit of Back to Eden, and the reason that we've chosen to do this, we want to be in control of our foods. They've changed definitions of what an organic food is now, where they're allowing certain chemicals in the process of that, and we don't want any of that. We're trying to eat the healthiest we can on the little piece of land that we have. So you can do it in a very, very small piece of land like what we have. You can do it at a large scale like Paul has. He has what? How many acres does he have? Do you know?
He actually has a total of 5 acres, but I believe his orchard and garden space is an acre of his property. His garden is within his orchard.
Yeah.
that's the other nice thing, you know. That's one thing that I plan on trying to do myself is if you have good proper spacing between your fruit trees, and they're properly pruned, you have more than enough room in there to plant your plants, and then you're saving more space on your property as well.
Back to Eden is super beneficial for people who grow orchards too, so it's not just gardens. Paul shows that in the documentary, is that you can have a ton of fruit trees on a very small piece of land. And when I go up to Elisa's house and show you her yard, we're going to see how many fruit trees she has. She has a ton of fruit trees on this very small piece of property, and it is amazing the variety she has.
I think her total backyard is 60 feet by 60 feet, and she gets more produce out of hers than we do here. Of course, our gardens are smaller.
Well, and the other thing is, because we have chickens, and you'll see Elisa has chickens. She has a variety of birds, actually. Chickens can also be really beneficial for back to Eden gardening, because you've got basically a built-in fertilizing system with natural fertilizer with no chemicals, and we use the chickens to get rid of, like, we throw in leftover garden, you know, debris from the fall. We throw our extra food waste from food scraps, and then we throw it back in their area. They till it up, and then you can use that to lay down on in your chips to help put more nutrients in it as well. And you'll see Paul does that, and it's just a really wonderful, like, symbiotic system.
It's a very simple system. I mean, you get the wood chips, put them in. You don't have to cure the wood chips. In fact, you don't want to. You want all that green material that comes in the wood chips from the arborists, because that's what creates your good compost in your dirt.
One thing that a lot of people want to know about is, how do you start the system? How do you set it? I know we have on a blog post, we explain how you set up the Back to Eden method. And a lot of people ask, you know, do I use cardboard? Do I use newspaper? Do I even have to do that? And we know that it's different for whatever area that you're putting your garden in. For us, and for a lot of people, they're putting their garden down over the top of the lawn.
Yep, that's what you want to do. Don't till up the lawn. If you've got a lot of wood chips, just go ahead and throw your wood chips 4 inches deep or more right there on top of it. If you don't have a lot of wood chips and you're kind of sparse, then you'll want to go ahead and put about 3 to 5 layers of newspaper right over top of your grass and weeds. If you can, what I did is I went through with my weed eater and I cut all the grass and weeds down to the soil. And I just left all the clippings in there because that's going to add nutrients to the soil. And then I put the newspaper down on top of it, and then just started putting in my layer of wood chips on top of that. Following year, I went heavier because the first layer of wood chips is already starting to break down. And you'll notice that happen. Usually for the first couple years, your wood chips will break down somewhat quick. It'll start to slow down over time. You just want that, you want a couple inches of a wood chip layer on the top, because that's what helps protect the roots and the soil from the sun, from the weeds. It helps keep it moist up underneath that couple layers, so it's a lot less work for you. That's pretty much it.
We hope you enjoyed this video about Back to Eden gardening and how it can be beneficial to helping create a healthier lifestyle for you and your family. We post videos once a week on how you can nurture a simpler, happier, healthier home. So be sure and subscribe and click the notification bell so you always know when we have a new video. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, y'all.
They're really,
2 of them are going now.
They're really proud of themselves. Here on me.
Okay.
I do this a lot, so you gotta stop.
What? I'm chilling with my coffee.